Hello everyone, welcome to the class of quantitative methods of management. So we have discussed about basics of statistics in unit 1, and then we have started discussing about measure of central tendency in unit 2, and now in unit 3 we'll go one step further in univariate data analysis and we'll discuss about measure of dispersion. So guys, in this unit 3.1 we'll discuss about the basics of measure of dispersion. So have you ever looked at the set of data and wondered how to truly understand its spread or variation? In this session, we'll explore the concept of measure of dispersion, which help us to do this work. We'll also discuss what makes a good measure of dispersion and what differences there is between absolute and relative measure. At the end of this topic, you will be able to define measure of dispersion, list the characteristics of good measure of dispersion, discuss absolute and relative measure of dispersion.
Now, discussing about the term measure dispersion. So, measure of dispersion as a concept is related to the extent or scatter or variability in the observation, where the variability is measured as a deviation from the central value. And we need a suitable form of calculation or tool which can average out all these deviations, and those tools all together in a group is called as the measure of dispersion tools. We'll discuss them in this class. Before we go further, let's discuss the objective of measure of dispersion. So few given below are the objectives of measure dispersion. Like, it help us to test the reliability of an average. Okay, it helps us in comparing the extent of variability into a mode distribution. It helps us to facilitate the computation of other statistical measure. Okay, measure of dispersion serve as a basis of control of variation. Okay, now discussing the statistic of a good measure dispersion, it should be easy to calculate. Okay, it should be easy to understand. It should be rigidly defined. Okay, it should be based on all observation. It should be capable of further mathematical treatment. Okay, it should not be duly affected by extreme observations. It should not be much affected by the fluctuation of sampling. Now discussing about the absolute and relative measure dispersion. So basically, when we talk about absolute measure dispersion, it express variation in the observation unit. Okay, where example can be millimeter of rainfall. And when we talk about relative measure dispersion, they are unitless and enable comparison of variation across data sets with different measurement units. Okay, the here tools we use are range, okay, quartile deviation, mean deviation, standard deviation. While relative measure dispersion will talk about coefficient of range, okay, coefficient of quartile deviation, coefficient of mean deviation, coefficient of variation.
Let's summarize the concept what we have discussed so far in this session. Point 1. Dispersion measures test average reliability, it compares variability, it aid in statistical calculation and control variation in areas like health and production. Point 2. A good measure of dispersion are easy to compute, they are stable and they are resistant to extremes. When we talk about dispersion, dispersion can be characterized into distance mechanism like range and average based measures like standard deviation, with absolute and relative forms enabling varied application. So I hope you have understood the concept of measure of dispersion which we have learned and what we have discussed in this class. So it's time to wind up this session. Happy learning.